Appreciate you, Dean Brad Bielski, and PAC General Manager David Mitchell making time for me. And we're also along with Rick Arredondo, the owner of the Ezekiel Project. I'm going to call you a community magnate, if you don't mind, Rick.
Okay.
You're kind of a guy that just really finds himself everywhere, I'd imagine. But here we are talking with, two of the leaders of, I think, is going to be community change. Rick, this is something that you kind of, I won't say brought to my attention. I've watched the growth of Kent Tusk and the PAC over the last few years, but you're able to describe the importance. And so since you can do it for me, I imagine you can do it for everybody else of where we're going to go. We're talking about essentially New Philadelphia and Tuscarawas County 2030. Why this? Why these two? Why the dean and why the PAC general manager? Do we take up their time, bring them in here?
Well, for me, as I said, I have my selfish motives. I want this community to thrive. I have a son who's 11 years old, and I see that this is part of his future. But I've also seen in my experience, because I was responsible for rural banking in California, and one of my main markets was San Luis Obispo. So I got to see Cal Poly, UC Davis just change the whole landscape of that area. And what happened is technology followed. We saw businesses follow. We saw out-of-state international students follow. And that created an economy within an economy. So I just see so much potential for a city of our size. And I feel like we need to cast a vision for 2030. And I feel like these two gentlemen are some of the major stakeholders that we need to hear what their ideas are so we can get, one, excited about it, and two, get behind it.
Brad, I've been hearing your name since I really started at JER. You take over and we see a growth at Kent Tusk that is creating excitement. I'm hearing about it at council meetings. I'm hearing about it from people like Rick. What resonates with you when we're having this conversation? Where does your mind go when we're talking about how this is going to change the entire community?
Mm-hmm. Well, to piggyback off something Rick said, there's an old saying that every great region has at its core and its center a great university. So universities not only serve students, but we serve regions, and we are key economic drivers for regions. So there was a survey that was done, I think it's been about 3 years ago, Ryan. Ernst & Young did a whole analysis, and we provide about $60–70 million of economic impact annually for this community. So, we want to see that be more like $100 or $150 million in the year 2030. Some of the things that we're excited about right now are our relationship not only here locally, but with the city of New Philadelphia and in the county and beyond. So, we're involved in a master planning process. The city is involved in a master planning process. And the mayor and I have spoken regularly about trying to create connections between the campus and the downtown area of New Philadelphia. Things like campus housing, things like trails, walkways between the campuses, bike paths, all of those things that students and folks in the community would like to see at our campus.
Something I'm interested in is, for you, how do you know what we need? Or maybe how do you basically source what you think we need in this community, as far as how do we make students' lives better here? How do we how do we grow this city for future students, and how do you anticipate their needs?
Well, it's a combination of things. So you listen, first of all, and you listen to different stakeholder groups. So you listen to the business community and say, these are the types of students that we need in order to provide help for our workforce. You listen to the students and say, here are the amenities and the types of facilities that we need in order to attract me to your campus. And one of the things we've been very successful at in the last 3 or 4 years is not only bringing students in from Tuscarawas and Carroll and Stark and some of the surrounding counties. We have students now from Texas, California, Illinois, and we even have international students. So we have a group of students, as Rick was pointing out, we have a group of students from Haiti right now. And a lot of people scratch their heads and they say, really? You have students from Haiti? And it's like, yeah. And sometimes the folks that scratch their head are the main campus, because they always sometimes think, well, the student body at Kent Tuscarawas or the student body at Ashtabula is mostly residents of the county, and that's very true. But when they query their reports and they say, you have 15 or 20 international students down there? And it's like, yeah, we really do. Brazil, Haiti, Guatemala, lots of different places. So.
Why is that the goal? Why? When I went to Indian Valley, Kent Tusk was always an option, not only for post-secondary, but for, could be a whole bachelor's degree, could be a lot of my prerequisites. Why is it the goal to not be local, but to be just another option in the array of colleges?
Well, I think there's 2 reasons for that. You want to provide the students that are coming to our campus regularly with a more diverse experience. So, it's wonderful that we have a tight-knit community, and there's a lot of good about that. But it's also really good for our students to see other places and other parts of life and other cultures.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of it. The second piece is that brings us more notoriety, not only nationally but internationally, and we become more of a choice in that great sea of choices for colleges and universities that international students see. They're like, there's a place called Tuscarawas County, and I looked on their website, and it looks beautiful. And I look at the cost that goes there, and I look at the majors that they have. I think I need to check this place out.
And that's exactly where I was going, is when I look at just the visual of Tuscarawas County, and it's smaller, it's rural, it's not in a city, but it feels a little bigger than it is. And having Dover and some other areas, but I think to me, it's just more the optics of, like, I'd rather have more of a relaxed, instead of competing in a city, because not everybody's comfortable anymore. I mean, I think a lot of people are taking a step back. And I think the beauty of the campus and the room they have to grow is really appealing.
Well, and, a positive sign is, we've had several of our students that have come from either other areas of the country or even cities like Cleveland, Cincinnati, Toledo, other areas of the state, come to Tuscarawas, graduate from Tuscarawas, and now some of them are looking for jobs in our county. So they're not in a rush to get back to their city or their home. They feel a level of comfort here and call this now their second home. So that's been refreshing to see as well.
We had an outside visitor come, and she does this blog about small town experiences, and I intentionally brought her out to meet David at the PAC, and she was blown away by just the visual of that building, and what she saw was the future. And this is a fresh set of eyes. So again, that's another reason to see it, because we look bigger than we are. And I think that's just a tremendous thing, David. So I don't know if you can speak to that as far as just what it's like to have that kind of facility that stands out.
Sure. So myself, I've been here for 5 years, and I've worked in, my entire professional career has been working in theaters, usually in bigger cities. And I always tell people, you don't find facilities like what we've got in areas like this. It doesn't exist. So we're extremely blessed to have the caliber of facility that we've got. But the PAC is more than just the building. It's the community that comes together to appreciate the arts and do the things that we do. So being attached to the university like we are, we've got a great opportunity to utilize this platform that we have. The building enables us to bring in entertainment from the outside area, but then we kind of have a responsibility to leverage that for other aspects of the community, working with education or things like that.
Yeah, that relationship between the PAC and just solely Kent State Tuscarawas seems is it mutual? Can I describe it as mutually beneficial, or is that? I guess maybe that's an open question. How do either of you describe it?
Well, I was here just before David, and I think David's done such a magnificent job managing the PAC. The thing I've been most impressed with is the way that he has opened up the PAC to the community, and particularly with the education options and cities series that we have. You know, in the past, we brought students into the PAC for specialized program, but David came up with the concept of let's take the PAC to the schools. Mm-hmm. So often we find that some of the acts that David has under contract, there's a rider, an addendum to the contract that says, oh, and by the way, you're going to play a small gig over at New Philadelphia Middle School, or, you know, one of the schools in the area. If you watch any of those videos, you'll understand the importance of the Performing Arts Center to this community on a different level. So we've all been there and enjoyed the shows, but this is where I think the real educational impact has. And, you know, I'll say, you know, for years, the arts have kind of come under a microscope, if you will, in order to say in the school systems, well, can we afford the arts? Are the arts as valued as? We believe very strongly that the arts are valued and are valuable, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that that is permeated in our local community.
Yeah, we've seen. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
David.
I was just going to say, within the university setting, most universities, the goal is to set up a habit of lifelong learning, and I think the arts play into that, because there's countless studies that show that participation in the arts, and I mean that could be passive participation where you're just an audience member, you know, that increases a person's empathy and emotional well-being. So everything that we do, I mean, it could be a Broadway show. It could be, you know, Rick Springfield, you know, an 80s rock star coming in. Everybody that comes across that stage has a different story to tell and comes from a different background. And as an audience member, you're learning from that. You're absorbing that experience. And that just, it's just going to make you a well-rounded person. So I think that plays within the role of a university setting perfectly. You know, they work in tandem.
Knowing the plan, especially through Kent Tusk, this all sounds like early footsteps to something bigger coming. I mean, I know we're working on a master plan. I know we're trying to create this direction of growth, not only for the campus, but for what will be, whether it's direct or an indirect effect, the rest of this community. So, I mean, where are we going?
So I guess I'll answer that question. So I think by the time we get that far in the future, we'll probably be about a 4,000 to 5,000 student campus, if we're talking 2030.
Compared to what now?
2,200.
Okay.
So
double,
I
essentially.
think we'll be double in size.
Okay.
And I think a lot of that will be driven by the projected cost of education as it goes forward. Who knows what we're experiencing now, how that's going to impact a lot of places. But I think from this point forward, particularly if remote learning becomes more integrated into what the university system is doing, people are going to say, you know, I can go to Kent State Tuscarawas for now $6,000 a year, get a great experience, whether I'm on the campus or sitting at home. And I think we're going to become kind of a practical destination of choice on top of, hey, when I'm on campus, there's so many cool things to do. I can see a live performance. I can watch our teams play basketball. I can go on a walking trail that goes all the way around the campus, and who knows, maybe one day hop on a electric-powered vehicle that drives back into New Philadelphia in the city and have a little fun, and then come back and spend the night in my own residence place.
Are we ready for 2X right now? Are we ready for 2 times the amount of students as we are right now?
No. So that would be, you know, that would require new and updated classrooms. But, you know, I envision, Ryan, that the classroom of the future is going to be as much of a studio or a production. So David, we're going to be knocking on the door, and David's been really helpful during this, knocking on the door to say, you know, the instructor is still going to be this focal point of the lecture and of the material, but we may have to do what we're doing now. You know, 2/3 of the class is actually here on campus listening to the professor lecture and interacting with the professor. And 1/3 of the class may be in California, Indiana. You know, I think this is the way things are going to be in the future. And I think part of that opportunity to expand the geographic base is going to drive our growth.
I imagine you pay attention to other schools growing in the same way. Am I right or am I wrong about that?
Every day.
So when you see that, how does that change a community, especially one like ours? If there's any way to parallel that with somebody that you see, I mean, what can people that are already here, maybe residents, maybe they don't have kids, maybe they're retired. I mean, what can they expect to come from these changes you're trying to implement over there?
So I think one of the things that people can expect is that the university, and Ryan, you know, we're a little different than most other colleges and universities in that we're locally owned.
Yeah.
So the buildings, the facilities, the grounds are owned by the community. So as we drive our own success academically, that affords or allows the community to benefit from that. So I do not want to put words in the branch district's mouth, but you only have to look at their history and say, you know, not a lot of campuses that are regional campuses or what others would call branch campuses have major performing arts centers. Not many have, business incubators on their campus. So every time we are successful from an enrollment standpoint, student standpoint, we're able to drive and reinvest that money into not only things that benefit students and their development, but also the community. So could you see a conference center that was adjacent to the Performing Arts Center down the road, but also a community center? Absolutely. Could you see some type of sporting event complex that was on our campus and benefited not just the campus, but the community? Absolutely. And that's the mindset I think we have moving forward.
David, does growth, this is a stupid question, does growth change what happens to you, to how you go day by day?
Growth in what context? Growth.
In terms of how Kent Tusk is expecting to grow, trying to grow.
So yeah, I mean, that would absolutely help us facilitate some of the stuff that we regularly do. We were talking before we started rolling about the education outreach that we do. We can absolutely do more of that. The only thing that's holding us back is finances at this point. Every program, every concert, every educational outreach thing that we do, all of those things have to cover their own costs. And if we can't do that, then we're not doing a good job business-wise. So with campus expansion, anything that happens that's just going to increase our capacity to do other things. Like if it's a conference center, we regularly have business expos and things like that. And we're confined by the footprint that we have, the square footage we have. If we have additional square footage, we can absolutely utilize everything that we've got at our disposal to its fullest extent and offer more than what we can currently do. So yeah, increased expansion, whether it be from our campus setting or just the community in general, population growth or anything like that, is absolutely going to benefit everything that we're doing at the Performing Arts Center.
Does that mean more, let's say, educational opportunities, or does that mean different?
Yes. No, I think more. So we've kind of have this model that we've been rolling out the past couple of years that works. And when we started it, the thought process was we can get it into every single school building in Tuscarawas County. And at the rate we were going, it was going to take 3.5 years in order to do that. Just this past season, we finally got to that last elementary school building. So now now we can repeat these things. So if we're able to expand things, we can certainly speed up that process and keep doing that model. But there's also other things that we could do. It's time and resources and things like that. That we haven't done yet.
Rick, from a business owner standpoint, I mean, what do you think when we're talking about maybe doubling the size of a student body or bringing more different people into ACTS at the Performing Arts Center? I mean, what excites you about that? What maybe do you take on as responsibility because of that?
Well, I got a banker hat. So the banker hat tells me we need investment in that sector. So the first thing I ask, do we have infrastructure to support the growth? So that takes a lot. Although the technology is probably cheaper than it was when that original fiber was laid back in the day.
Right.
But I also believe that if you've got a great story, you will get, like the hotel chain would be interested in this story here and want to put a flagship hotel, is a lot about what's being created, the excitement about it. So that's the nuance to it. Like, how do they get excited and want to invest dollars here in Tuscarawas County, particularly at the Kent State campus? The other side of it is I want the small business community to be ready to accept the new students coming. So for example, with Off the Wall Ministry having their church in the downtown, it's going to bring 50 students that are going to be physically walking our downtown. That's going to change the complexion of our downtown.
Yeah.
So that means, where they're going to get the jobs from, right, to suit their schedule. So, and I also believe that they want to see younger entrepreneurs operating shops that they can relate to.
Right.
And so it's the experience, it's the investment. All these things have to kind of happen, not simultaneously, but there has to be some orchestration to it. So that's why I think this podcast is really important, because the city has a stake in it. Kent State Tuscarawas has a stake in it. Me as a small business owner, city council. I mean, you just go down the myriad. We all have to be on the same page.
Right.
And I feel like we only have so many economic levers we can pull. And I think the education lever has a huge dividend that you can't find if you brought a huge manufacturer here, because it's not going to be the same kind of manufacturing they saw here 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And, I will be a proponent for higher education.
What? I can't believe it.
For
really.
the rest of my
We
life
got a
and
ringer in the
beyond.
room.
So yes, but I really value the trades, and I really value and higher education isn't a goal for everyone. But if you just look at the numbers from the 2008 recession and even what we're experiencing now, I know if you had earned a bachelor's degree during the recession of 2008, you felt a little pain. And if you'd had a graduate degree, you felt really no pain at all economically. And we're seeing that being pretty much mirrored right now. So I think I saw if you've saw statistics, if you earned a bachelor's degree, the unemployment rate only increased about 1% for that group of folks. So unfortunately, the people that have been hit hardest by the COVID recession are those folks that don't have a bachelor's degree or an associate degree. So I'm going to be a proponent for higher education and say, the jobs of the future are still going to depend on some level of formal education post-secondary.
No, that makes complete sense to me to think that. Well, one, the dean is rather pushing higher education. That's not a surprise. But to grow, do we keep that idea of there? I mean, do you have any kind of stats on what kind of adult, or rather, people that are coming back to college, people that are coming back to earn that degree? Do you have any numbers on that at Kent Tusk?
So our population is actually becoming younger and younger. So I'll give you an example. If you would have asked this question 10 years ago, the average age on campus would have been 27, 28. It's about 22, 23 right now.
Okay.
So a part of the reason for that is many adults are looking for they still want to come back and earn a college degree, but they're looking for a very flexible, compact, and quick way to do it. Mm-hmm. So, the University of Phoenix for many years and a lot of online options did very well in the adult education market. But right now, if you take a look at the numbers at the University of Phoenix, they're plummeting.
Okay.
So we have a real opportunity to re-engage with a lot of those folks and present them with a more flexible option now through remote learning and online learning here locally, that maybe we didn't have quite that ability even 2 or 3 years ago.
Is that something we continue to value? Is that something we would like to see here? I mean, that kind of a loaded question. I don't want to shirk off anybody, and I don't want to say that we're not trying to grow and attract those younger generations to come here for a full college experience. I mean, mm-hmm. How do you balance that?
Well, the populations are becoming less distinct. So I think there was a time where if you were 18 to 22 years old, you wanted to sit in the classroom, learn from your professor, put your books away, and go back to your dorm room or your apartment. And I think if you were an adult, you wanted to come in the evening, or you wanted to learn online.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a complete blending of that going forward. We're adults, and we're going to have a 40-year-old who's coming back who maybe started college, 20 years ago, and for whatever reason, life got in the way and weren't able to finish. Mm-hmm. Sitting in the same classroom with a 15-year-old college credit plus student.
Yeah.
So, and the outcomes and the expectations are going to be exactly the same. So I think you're going to see some of those definitional barriers between what is an adult learner and what is a traditional learner kind of go away, or at least become more blurred.
And COVID's kind of throwing you into an escalation phase of doing it faster than you think. And I think also the adult learner is having to escalate their ability to start to accept that there's a new norm because their kids are going through it.
Right.
So it's kind of thrown, I've talked to a lot of small businesses who felt I didn't need this technology, and now it's an essential, is what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So with these changes, what kind of cooperation is happening between city leaders, business leaders, and you as we try to make sure this all meshes into an easy transition, I guess?
So those meetings continue regularly, mostly by Teams or Zoom or whatever, WebEx or whatever product you have at your disposal. So the Tuscarawas County Economic Development Corporation meets regularly. The Community Improvement Corporation meets regularly. I've met with the mayor and all these boards. A lot of the same community leaders sit on multiple boards. Mm-hmm. So there is this, what is decided at one body automatically kind of pollinates the other body. So, you may have heard the mayor and some interested community members are very interested in bringing rail from Denison-Uricksville this way and out north towards Dover. So I've heard that discussion probably in 2, 3, 4 different community board meetings I've been at. So that's kind of how that coordination really occurs, is that major items or major projects seem to be on multiple agendas within the city and within the county.
One thing that I think I have to ask, I don't know if it's out of place right now for this conversation, but working in the newsroom at the station, it was obvious to me, and I don't know why, that the Gateway project was news. Why was that news? Maybe that's for both of you. I mean, why was that such a big deal? Because I know it was, but I don't know why.
Because a lot of people said it couldn't be done. That's a friend of mine once said to me, "Why did you choose that spot for the Gateway?" I said, "Because that's where I liked it."
That's where it needed to be.
That's where it needed to be.
Good answer.
So I think the reason it was news, though, is there was some excitement and buzz built around it, but it's not the road itself. It's what it can lead on either side of the road or what it can lead to. Mm-hmm. So when we envisioned the original plan, we said we want to build a university community on the other side of that road. So we talked about, where do the housing units go? Do we have coffee shops, and do we have other businesses on site at Kent State Tuscarawas? So I think that the roadway is important, and it's symbolic, and it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So I always contended when I first came here, it's like we have such a beautiful campus, and the access road,
don't go down there at 3:00.
Yes, yeah. We need to have a grand entrance because we have a grand performing arts center, a grand science and technology building. Let's do ourselves right and create this entrance. But long term, the land that is around both of those, on this side of the creek and the other side of the creek, is prime for development.
And that's kind of music to my ears, because as we started to do a lot of the public art here, the pushback was, can you just fix the pothole in front of my house? Because that to me is going to make a big difference in my life. And I'm kind of starting to see a shift, and it's not even subtle right now. I think within my own public art we have, and David's been a big supporter, Dean obviously has been a big supporter, but my point is it's like we have this emergence that's coming, and with that comes a cultural change. And I think we've got a little bit of that identity crisis of what we were and what we are going to be. But it does come down to like, what's my quality of life and these decisions. So I could see that being, wow, that's way out there, to others saying, wow, that's a gateway to progress. So I think it's an amazing thing.
So in 2030, how does the ideal student spend an ideal day in Tuscarawas County? I think David and Brad can both answer
David,
this.
why don't you start? I've been talking for a while.
So 2030, how does the ideal spend their day? The hope is at that time there's development of residence halls on campus. So they're living in that footprint of the campus. There's nightlife options with what the Performing Arts Center is bringing. And if there's retails, coffee shops, whatever that development brings. But yet, I went to college and living in a dorm was great. But you wanted to kind of explore your environment a little bit more. So coming downtown New Philadelphia, exploring what our options are there. Sometimes college students don't have cars. So, if there's a walking trail or something that is easily accessible to other forms of entertainment or recreation, I think that's key. So would I love it if the students never left campus and came to every single Performing Arts Center event and absorbed that culture? I would love that. Reality, maybe not. But it's going to kind of lay the groundwork for that cultural shift that you were talking about, Rick, about expanding outside of our campus footprint, campus walls, and having an impact on the community.
And I think very similarly, I have 4 children, three in college, one's in med school now, 2 still in college, and one at Dover. And so it's kind of, for me, what would I like to see happen for my kids if they were down the road in 2030 here. So I think, a student would ideally wake up in their nice quarters, either on or adjacent to campus, walk into the student union and have breakfast, or walk across the street and see that there's a business like the Daily Grind or the Daily Grind, or something right across where they could grab coffee and grab a snack or something like that. Sit in a beautiful new classroom, get top level instruction. Maybe either play a basketball practice or game later that evening. Go see something at the Performing Arts Center, but in the long term, say, I have a vision for myself or a plan for myself, and I want to be a small entrepreneur, like you're talking about. So I can say, well, I'm taking my classes and I'm getting all of the theory, but right across the street, there's this building called the Talati Technology Incubator that has a small business development center in it. I, as a student, can go over there now and learn how to start my own business. What forms I need to fill out, what banking resources there are here in the community to help me get that started. So it's kind of like being an all-encompassing, comprehensive campus and university, a center for knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I would say, we always focus, and rightfully so, on the degree-bearing option, but let's not forget about some of the things that we do in workforce training, workforce development, and other aspects of the campus too.
So let me just ask a question, because one of the things I'm coming from California, it seemed like our rural communities had much more local support for their athletic teams than the bigger cities that just seemed, there were just too much to choose from. You mentioned basketball practice and other things. How big is athletics going to be in the next 10-year cycle? Because coming to Ohio, you got to wear scarlet and gray. You're going to be watching.
Well, we wear blue and gold, just to
okay, sorry. Can you edit that out? Well, blue and gold's I'm a UCLA guy, so
we'll get you some blue and gold.
Blue and gold's awesome, my favorite colors. But it just seems like there's so much focus locally in these rural communities on their sports activities and things like that. So how does that blend into what you're doing?
Well, I'm in my 7th year here now. I came from a small private campus, And I knew how important athletics was to that campus. And I knew what opportunities it brought here for our campus. So that was kind of a glaring issue. The two things that I noticed were that the community was highly invested in athletic programs. I think we've got a football game coming up Friday.
Think so.
Yeah, I think so. That-
Wait, which one?
I don't know. But
I think you stopped counting after 100. So.
yeah, so, but it was and is an important value for this community. And likewise, I saw that as a big opportunity, but then secondarily, I was really surprised at how the community has a commitment to the arts. So not just the Performing Arts Center, but going out and seeing a little theater production, or going over to Trumpet in the Land, or many of the other venues that we have in the county, Ohio Star Theater, and out that way as well. I mean, there is just a plethora of opportunities for people here and from outside the community to come and watch quality programming. Mm-hmm. So, it was one of those things. It's like, well, here are two things that the community clearly values, and how can we as Kent State Tuscarawas enhance or promote that? I thought that the arts piece was being done pretty well with the Performing Arts Center, but the athletics piece, we had a big hole, and we could fill that void easily. So I think it will always be a piece of what we do. I think it helps to add to that student development piece, no question. But our focus is always going to be on 2 and 4 year and maybe 6-year degrees here at the campus.
I keep hearing about the brain drain. Is that something that this is a fix for? Is that something that still will need fixed after we're making this draw for people to come to school here?
So the brain drain exists everywhere, particularly in smaller towns and rural communities. So the best way to do that is to say that there are opportunities here at home that are as exciting and pay as well as the opportunities that you have even in Canton and Akron and up into Cleveland. So do we have, for instance, nursing students? It's one of our larger majors. Many of our nursing students do stay right here in Tuscarawas County. Do we have nursing students that say, wow, Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland is really paying top dollar right now, or something like that? I may just move to Cleveland.
Yeah.
That's where the brain drain comes in. It's not a desire for folks to leave the community necessarily. It's a desire to say, well, I want to give the best opportunities I can for my family, and that seems to be, from an economic perspective, a move somewhere else. Now, they don't always factor in cost of living and all those other factors and quality of life, but the first thing that they do see is salary.
So is that to say it's a numbers game? If we double our student body, we're obviously going to be affecting who's leaving and how many are leaving and how many are
Right.
staying.
But the counter to that, as I mentioned, is drawing folks from outside Tuscarawas County to our county, because there's an old saying about the grass always seems greener on the other side. So you have folks that have been born and raised in Tuscarawas County and educated here, and they think, wow, a move to Columbus would be just great. I've seen a lot of people, even since I've been here, though, that moved to Columbus and decided to move back from
Yeah.
Columbus.
Well, and I've got a perfect example. We were talking to a patron that was at the Performing Arts Center, this might have been a year ago, that grew up in the area, left, and they were living in the Cleveland suburbs, and then they're we're looking for a change. We wanted someplace to move, and they were thinking about coming back, but they said, you know what? Cleveland has a lot of arts and culture that we just love, and we have great access to that. But you know what? There's a Performing Arts Center down in New Philadelphia. That'll cover our needs. And they moved back to the area. And the biggest hurdle, the biggest stumbling block for them, and that gave them pause, was access to the arts. Because we have a world-class Performing Arts Center in our backyard, they didn't question it any longer, and they moved back to the area. Mm-hmm. So I think as you're talking quality of life and things that this area can offer, I think the Performing Arts Center is right there at the top. Mm-hmm. We used to have a saying, big city stars, small town, environment. We're bringing the same tours that are going specifically with the Broadway shows that we bring in. These exact same shows that come to come to New Philadelphia, also play Los Angeles and Detroit and Chicago and New Philadelphia, Ohio. And I keep saying one of these things is not like the other, but it's the exact same show that you would see in a bigger city, and we're bringing that entertainment and that cultural experience right to your back door. So I think that plays a big part in combating that brain drain. That the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and things are pretty good right here.
Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, I've seen recent evidence of students from other areas of the state and of the country saying, no, I think I'll just set up roots here in Tuscarawas County. I like it here.
Yeah.
So,
Well, one compliment I want to pay both of you is I feel this integration of what you're doing in the community and vice versa. And one of the things that, and you got to tell this story, David, because you did this outreach.
Which story?
It's the beatbox story.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
That was a good one.
so I think it's kind of indicative of what Dean described of this de-emphasis somewhat because of budget constraints on the arts at the local elementary, middle school level. You bringing that to people who have never seen it before,
Right.
and just feeling like I made this connection to something that I wouldn't have had any chance of seeing without the PAC being there. So
Right.
can you talk about that?
Yeah. So with our educational outreach, where we're actually taking artists out into schools, yes, we can probably have a bigger impact by bringing students to the PAC, because we can, in normal times, we can seat 1,000 students. So 1,000 people could experience that at a time. But I kind of felt it was important to get those artists out into the schools on the students' turf. So we're in a school gym in an elementary school. Maybe there's 200 students. But seeing that professional musician come into their school, I don't want to sound grandiose or anything, but in a sense, it could be life-changing. And one of the first groups that we took out was an a cappella group named Voice Play, and they have a vocal percussionist that goes out with the group. And so we're in these schools, and they're doing their performance, and I have the best job in the world because I'm just a roadie on those days. I set up sound equipment and tear it down, and then I'm just a fly on the wall, and I get to experience this joy that is coming across through the students. And the assembly was over, the performance was over. I'm starting to tear things down, and I go over, and I kind of see that there's a student, he's probably in second grade, that is talking to the vocal percussionist. And so I kind of walk over to kind of see what the conversation's like, and this little kid's beatboxing for him. I'm gonna try it for saying that. And he was good. Thank you very much. That's all I got. But for a second grader, he was really good. And they had this moment, and then it was time for the student to leave. The student left. And then we hear the story from one of the teachers there that this is the student that struggles in class. Behavioral issues. Sometimes he's throwing chairs. He just really struggles in school, and we've never had an assembly like this. And we honestly didn't think that he was going to be able to make it through the assembly without some kind of an outburst. And we gave him the warning. One outburst and you're gone. You're in the hallway, and you're going to miss out. And he was locked in for 45 minutes with this professional group that was in his school. And he was so moved by what he saw that he wanted to go up and look what I can do and have this connection, have this moment. And so I always say, whenever we go out into these schools, it's for that one kid. It's for that one moment. I'm sure there's other stories, and I have a couple others, but we won't go into all of them today. But those are the impact. That's the moment we're looking for. And we're never trying to go into schools and teach these students that, you're going to be, you should be a professional musician. That's not the point. The point is to show them that anything is possible. You can do whatever you want, whatever you're good at, whatever your skill set is, find your passion and go with it. So that's the message that we're going out there, and we're just doing it through music. And there's countless other studies that show that learning through music is much more beneficial than other ways of learning, and just to have that the student might struggle in math or reading or whatever, but in the music classroom, they can really shine, and they can realize, maybe I do have some self-worth, that I'm, not smart or something. And so those are the opportunities that we want to put out there for the students. And like I said, we keep doing it more. It's just a matter of resources in order to do that. But every school district that we've worked with, they've all, welcomed us with open arms. And I should mention that we don't charge the schools anything for this. This is completely free. So I get questioned from some of these principals sometimes, and I call them and I say, I want to bring this artist into your school on this date. They're like, okay, how much? What's the catch? I'm like, no catch. Just give me a gym, give me access to the kids, and we're going to come in and hopefully change lives. Again, I'm sounding a little grandiose. But
Something has to change lives.
Right. And why not arts, and why not music? And so we put it out there, no charge, and hopefully we're making an impact.
Yeah, and I want to also say that contributions from the community to the Performing Arts Center really do help to make shows like that possible. So, things, we've got season sponsors and so forth, and we've got folks that contribute regularly to our annual fund. Sometimes those dollars are able to underwrite some of those performances.
Ooh, I get to do that radio thing. How do we do that?
Get out your checkbook, write out a check, and then add a few more zeros. And then,
I don't want to cut you off from a real answer. No, you have your contributors.
No, actually, we've got an education fund that we set up to specifically support the education things. We have our membership program that helps all the programs us to bring in headlining entertainers and Broadway shows. But if people really want to target that education thing, we do have an education fund that we just started 2 years ago now that can support that. We also, sponsorship. We write grants to cover some of the costs of some of these things, which we've got statewide grants. We've got Arts Midwest, which is a regional conglomerate of arts organizations. We've received grants a couple years to do educational stuff. So it's we're never hurting. We can always use more funds, because the more funds we can get, the more students we can reach in a quicker fashion.
It seems like the dots are there when we're talking about what we want to accomplish. More education, doubling our student body with this vision that we have. Is it a game of connecting them over time, or are there challenges saying if we can connect them?
no, I don't think it's an if. It's when we connect them. So I think we're in a very different place than many colleges and universities are, unfortunately. We're in a very strong financial position, and always have been. This is nothing new. So Kent State, the university, is in a good financial position, and the Tuscarawas campus is in a very good financial position. So we, unlike some of our unfortunate competitors, have the wherewithal to dream right now and to put some financial resources behind those dreams, where a lot of my colleagues at other places are just trying to worry about right now keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
So fortunately, we're not in that place. We've had good management and good leadership in all areas of the campus for decades. So that has contributed well to our current position. So where other places, what I'm getting at is where other places may have to stop and say, well, I don't even have any seed money for something like this. Where can we find some funds? Well, we're going to need some help and some funds, but we have some financial wherewithal to help make some of these dreams a reality.
When saying that it's a win kind of a situation, then I mean, you guys have been proving yourselves for over 20 years now.
Yeah.
What's the next work of proof to say that this conversation is already happening, and here's where you can look to see that change, the next thing to change?
Well, I think the first thing you'll see when our master plan is unveiled is a serious emphasis on the student housing piece. So that's where our board landed when we were doing the master planning process. That's where our students landed when we were doing the master planning process. So I think that would be the first point of emphasis. But even during this pandemic, we've not stopped. So if you, like I was saying earlier, if you take a drive out to campus right now, it looks like an entire hill is being leveled, and it is.
Yeah.
Because right now, our John Demuth Trail stops right at the entrance to the Performing Arts Center, or that little back road. And eventually we want that to go all the way across the road up to the Talati Incubator, around 180 acres of property, and give our students and our community the opportunity to walk, exercise in a kind of safe, open environment. And I have an ulterior motive, of course. I want them to walk by the Performing Arts Center and say, hey, I wonder what's playing at the Performing Arts Center this weekend. Maybe I'll just stop in for tickets. Or, hey, it looks like something's happening over at the gym.
How conniving.
Yeah, you know.
I like the way you think.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of method to the madness, if you know what I mean.
What I missed, guys? What did I not talk about?
Well, one thing we had an out-of-town visitor, and we went to Craft Restaurant, and they were saying on the night that there's a pack event, it's packed. So the local business economy is very related to a lot of things that are going on here.
Oh,
So-
absolutely. I mean, and even if you take out the audience perspective of what we do, before you come to a show, you go out to eat, or if you're coming from out of town or staying in a hotel, but just the artists themselves when they come in. When we bring in a Broadway tour, these hotels in the area are getting 50 rooms booked for a night. You know, they're eating at the local restaurants, just the tours themselves. But as a performing arts center, we're pulling from 24 states and Canada. That people are coming to our area and they're spending money in our area, you know, whether hotels or restaurants or local shops in the downtown area. So the economic impact that we've got is huge. The arts community has done studies, and for every dollar that somebody spends on a ticket, they spend, I'm going to get it wrong now. Well, one study says 12, another one says 36. But you know,
It's 24, David.
It's 24.
Yeah,
Split the difference. Split the difference.
12's enough for every $1 on a ticket.
Right, exactly. But that's the money that they're investing in the local community. So, whenever we've got events, I mean, it absolutely has a major economic impact on our area.
Yeah, one of the, I mean, it was kind of a sobering moment I had early on in the pandemic. I was at a local restaurant right before it closed, and we had already kind of said, well, we're not holding classes, we're going remote. And in the booth behind me, someone was saying, well, how's business going? And the waitress said, well, since Kent's been closed, our business has been way down. So, you know, that's when it really hits home for me. It's not just, you know, is our business okay? It's how much the community businesses depend on our students and our faculty and our staff, you know, being invested in their businesses, particularly, I think, here in the city.
I think that sums up a lot of what we're doing this thing.
We should have started there.
No, well, yeah, but I think what a great place to end, because I do feel that's really the story.
No, I mean, I appreciate you guys' time. My eyes have been opened. I'm positive that anyone watching this, anybody listening to this, their eyes have been opened on the impact that you have. I don't want to leave anything unsaid. I don't want to leave anything on the table, so stop me. Otherwise, I'm just going to say thank you very much for taking the time. I know. Thank you for going through the wearing of the masks for a whole hour of talking on the microphone. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do. And Rick, I appreciate the setting.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
And, thanks for visiting with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We always love talking about. At least I do. I won't speak for the dean, but I always love talking about the PAC. I always say I'm not an interesting person. I just have a really cool job.
Yeah.
And it's super easy to talk about that great facility. So anytime.
Yeah. In fact, what are you doing tomorrow?
I'm in. No, we'll be watching
Round
closely.
Well, I would encourage you guys to do more podcasting, because I do feel like that medium now,
Yeah.
and the attention span of people just, you know, not just passive listening. And there's so much that, you know, you can only take in one sitting. So
Sure.
you guys have a great story.
Rick's got a great podcast studio. Just keep that in
well,
mind.
there's
everyone.
plenty of others too, but it's just been a pleasure that you guys were part of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.